Hi all, welcome to my channel CyberSec Prep. Today we are going to go through CISSP certification questions for the domain 1 security and risk management. Okay, question number 1. James is responsible for his organization's security awareness program. He is concerned that changes in technology may make the content outdated. What control can he put in place to protect against this risk? Options: gamification, computer-based training, content reviews, live training. We have to select the most appropriate and correct response out of these four options. So let's look at the options. Gamification. Gamification is a technique which is used to enhance the participation for the training. So basically, it adds some video elements, some graphics, right? It's a technique to ensure that the participants are engaged. So this option does not look relevant to this question because the question is asking about how do we ensure that the content remains relevant and updated. So let's park this option for now. Let's move on to the next option. Computer-based training. Computer-based training is also a kind of training where people are given a module where they have to kind of go through the module, and it may be having some quizzes at the end or in between. But this is not something a control which can protect against the risk that we're talking about, right? Okay. Now, option number C, content reviews. Content reviews, yes. So basically, this option allows someone to continually verify the content in the training program, and as per the organization needs, and ensure that the content is up to date based upon the evolving risk landscape. So this option is looking good for now, but let's look the remaining option, which is live training. Live training again is a type of training delivered to the participants. It's a live session where the trainer gives the training, by some means. It could be physical or through online. But again, the purpose of this training is to just deliver the training, but does not ensure that the content, remains updated. So, based on our review of all four options, the option C, content review, is the correct response to this question. Moving to the next question. Henry is creating a report to management on the results of his most recent risk assessment. In his report, he would like to identify the remaining level of risk to the organization after adopting security controls. What term best describes this current level of risk? Options are inherent risk, residual risk, control risk, and mitigated risk. Let's look at the first option, inherent risk. Now, inherent risk is basically the risk, original risk you can say, that existed prior to implementation of any controls. Okay, but the question is about the risk, basically the remaining level of risk, that is there after adopting the security controls. But inherent risk is something different. So this is not the right answer. Let's move on to the next option, residual risk. Residual risk is the level of risk that remains after controls have been applied to mitigate the risk. So for now, this is looking uh, correct option, but let's look at the other two options as well. So what is control risk? Control risk is a new risk, basically, which is introduced by addition of controls to the environment. Okay, but again, this is not something which leads to the risk which remains after even applying the controls. So this is also not the correct option. Last risk is mitigated risk. Now, mitigated risk is the risk that has been addressed by the existing controls. So once the risk is mitigated, there is no remaining risk, right? Remaining level of risk, whenever there is identified, that would be falling under the residual risk. So for this, question, the correct answer is option B, residual risk. Moving to the next question, question number 3. Daniel is a security specialist for online service provider in the United States. He recently received a claim from a copyright holder that a user is storing information on his service that violates the third party's copyright. What law governs the actions that Daniel must take? Options are Copyright Act. First option is Copyright Act. Now, Copyright Act is an act that creates a mechanism for the issuing and enforcing copyrights, but it does not cover the actions of online service provider. So it is not relevant to the question. Let's look at the second option, which is Lanham Act. So Lanham Act basically is an act which regulates the issuance of trademarks to protect the intellectual property. It has nothing to do with this question which relates to the violation of copyright by the online service provider. So again, this is not a correct option. Let's look at the third option, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Now this act, what it does, it sets forth the requirements for online service providers when handling copyright complaints received from the third parties. So this might be the correct answer, but let's also look at the last option, then we'll figure out what is the correct answer. So the last option is Graham Leach Billy Act. So basically, in short, we call it as GLBA. So GLBA is an act which regulates the handling of personal financial information. So it has nothing to do with the copyrights. So we are left with only one option, which is option number C, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is the correct answer for this question. Move on to the next question. Question number 4. XYZ travel company has offices in both European Union and United States and transfer personal information between those offices regularly. They have recently received a request from an EU customer requesting that their account be terminated under the GDPR, which requirement for processing personal information states that individuals may request that their data no longer be disseminated or processed. Okay, so in this question, basically it's a request by the individual about their data processing. So the question says that basically there should be no data processing as per the request from the user. Okay, so we have to focus on the keywords here. No longer be disseminated or processed. Now look at the options. Option number A, the right to access. See, the right to access option is basically what it means is an individual have the right to ask the organization what data organization have in possession of the individual and why they are using that for what purpose, right? It gives them the right to obtain a copy of their personal data, but it does not give them a right to this option does not give them the right to disseminate or the request the processing of their data. So this is not a correct option. Option number B, privacy by design. Privacy by design is not a individual right as per se. This is more of an approach, proactive approach to ensure that privacy risks are identified, to a solution or a product before they are developed. So it is also not a right option. The third option is the right to be forgotten. Yes, this is looks like a correct option because in as per this option, the right to be forgotten is a fundamental right of individuals where they can ask their controller. Controller means which have the control over their data, which have the which the organization or the entity which are using the data of the individual for some purpose, right? So right to forgotten gives them a fundamental right that they can withdraw the consent for which they have given their data, and thereby the controller has to remove their data or erase their data from entirely from their systems. So for now this looks like a correct answer, but let's look at the remaining option, the right of data portability. The right of data portability is a kind of a right for given to the individual so that they can basically ask the controller to port their data. So this is again not a correct answer. So the correct answer for this question is C, the right to be forgotten. Move on to the next question now. Question number 5. After conducting a qualitative risk assessment of her organization, Sally recommends purchasing cybersecurity breach insurance. What type of risk response behavior is she recommending? Right. So the options which we have is accept, transfer, reduce, reject. Now look at the option number A, accept. See, whenever we are accepting the risk, which means that we have applied some controls, and after applying the controls, still we see that we cannot do further anything on the risk mitigation part. So at some point we have to accept that risk, right? So acceptance of the risk is basically when you have already uh, applied some security controls, or you have made some efforts to reduce the risk, right? But for this question, this does not looks relevant, because here basically we are not applying any control. It's just that uh, we have to identify what is the risk behavior after we have suggested uh, for a cybersecurity breach insurance. So for now, this is not the correct option. Now we talk about the next option, which is transfer. So risk transfer is basically when we have transferred the risks to a different entity, right? So for example, purchasing insurance is a means of transferring risk. If Sally had worked to decrease the likelihood of the events occurring, she would have been using a reduce or risk mitigation strategy, which simply means that continuing to the function as organization has would be an example of acceptance strategy. So this looks like a right answer for now, but let's look at the other option, which is reduce and reject. So again, as I told you, the reduce and reject also not the right option, because here we are not trying to reduce the risk. We are just transferring the risk by purchasing the cybersecurity breach insurance from a third party. So the correct option for this question is option B. Moving on to the next question. Which one of the following elements of information is not considered personally identifiable information that would trigger most United States state data breach laws? Question number 6. Okay. Now this is quite easy. So as you can see from the all the four option, we can see social security number. It's like a unique number assigned to all the residents of the United States. Driving license number is also uh, PII information, and credit card number is obviously. So remaining option which we are left with is option number A, student identification number. This is the right answer for this question. Also, to give you additional information, most state data breach notification laws are modeled after California's data breach notification law, basically which covers the social security number, which covers the driving license number and state identification number, credit card numbers, debit card numbers, and bank account numbers. California's breach notification law also protects some items not commonly found in the other state laws, including medical records and health insurance information. These laws are separate and distinct from privacy laws, such as California Consumer Privacy Act (CCPA), basically, which regulates the handling of personal information more broadly. Okay, so for this question, option A is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. Michael is speaking to his board of directors about their responsibilities to review cybersecurity controls. What rule requires that senior executives take personal responsibility for information security matters? Options are due diligence, personal liability rule, prudent man rule, due process rule. See, due diligence option is basically uh, is when somebody is doing beyond their normal job duties, right? But here the question is asking like uh, a rule, right? So due diligence is not a rule, first of all, right? In the CDK terminology, due diligence is a act where basically someone does activities way beyond their normal job duties. So for now, this is not a correct answer. Personal liability rule. Personal liability rule is not a CBK terminology, and it can be applied to anything, right? But it does not uh, relevant. It is not relevant for this question. So this is again not a correct answer. Prudent man rule. Now, prudent man rule is a rule which requires that senior executive take personal responsibility for ensuring that due care that ordinary prudent individuals would exercise in the same situation. Right. So this rule basically is originally applied to the financial matters, but the federal sentencing guidelines applied them to the information security matters in the United States in the year 1991. So for now, this looks like a correct answer, but let's look at the other option, due process rule. Due process rule is not a any rule for ensuring that senior executive take the personal responsibility. So it is also not a correct answer. Now the correct answer is option number C, prudent man rule. Next question. Adam recently assisted one of his co-workers in preparing for the CISSP exam. During this process, Adam disclosed confidential information about the content of the exam in violation of Canon 4 of the Code of Ethics, advance and protect the profession. Who may bring ethics charges against Adam for this violation? Options, we have four options below. Anyone may bring charges, anyone certified or licensed professional may bring charges, only Adam's employer may bring charges, or only the affected employee may bring charges. Well, this is a question about who has standing to bring an ethics complaint, right? The group of individuals who has standing differs based upon the violated canon. In this question, in this case, we are examining canon number 4, right? So, canon number 4 basically uh, is a principle which permits any certified or licensed professional who subscribes to a code of ethics to bring charges. So, in the four options, option number B is relevant to the requirement of this question. So for now, this is the correct answer, right? We will see what other canons, talk about. So, for example, charges of violations of canon 1 and 2 may be brought by anyone. So, canon 1 and canon 2 are different, from the canon 4. Similarly, charges of violations of canon 3 may only be brought by a principal with an employer or contractor relationship with the accused. So here we are talking about the canon 4, which is basically permits any certified or licensed professional, right, who has subscribed to the code of ethics to bring the charges. So for this question, option B is the correct answer. Move on to the next question, question number 9. Kathy is working with one of her organization's European Union business partners to facilitate the exchange of customer information. Kathy's organization is located in United States. What would be the best method for Kathy to use to ensure GDPR compliance? Option A, binding corporate rules. Option B, privacy shield. Option C, option C, standard contractual clauses. Option D, safe harbor. Well, the European Union provides standard contractual clauses that may be used to facilitate data transfer. That would be the best choice in this case or this question where two different companies are sharing data, right? So option number C for now is looking like a correct answer. If the data were being shared internally within the company, then binding corporate rules uh, can be also considered as an option. But that is not the case here. Here we are talking about two different companies. Privacy shield was a safe harbor agreement, that would previously have allowed the transfer, but right now it is no longer uh, valid. So for this question, Option number C, standard contractual clauses, is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. Mary is the Chief Privacy Officer for a financial institution and is researching privacy requirements related to customers' checking accounts. Which one of the following laws is most likely to apply to this situation? GLBA, SOX, SOX, HIPAA, or the last option, FERPA? Now let's look at options. GLBA. What is GLBA? GLBA contains provisions related to basically regulating the privacy of customer financial information. Okay, and here in the question we are talking about the financial institution and also privacy requirements related to the customer checking accounts. So now GLB is looking like a perfect answer, but we'll also review the other ones. Okay. Also, GLBA applies specifically to the financial institutions, whereas the next option, SOX. SOX Act basically regulates the financial reporting activities of publicly traded companies. So this option is not relevant for this question. Next is HIPAA. HIPAA is a it stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and this act regulates the handling of protected health information. In the question, there is no reference of protected health information (PHI) data, so this option is not a correct option. Next, we are moving to the FERPA. Okay, FERPA means Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. This is an act which basically regulates the handling of student education records. Here, in the question, there is no reference to any student records, education records basically belonging to the student. So this option is also not the right option. The correct answer is A, GLBA. With this, we are done with the this video. Hope to see you in the next video soon. Thanks. Bye.